There are two kinds of people in this world. The people who fail to do what they know they should, and those who keep doing things they know they shouldn't. Guess what? You're both. Hi, I'm your podcast host and life and business coach, Marcy Barker, aka your loving kick in the pants. In this podcast, I'll teach you the 6 steps of my accountability code framework that will enable you to wake up with clarity and show up with aligned action steps that make follow through easy and peaceful. When you're ready for more, head to marcybarker.com and we'll chat about your next goal. All right, let's dive in. Hello, my beautiful people. Today, we are talking about the 5th step of the accountability code, which is commitment. Now, in my accountability accelerator, commitments are laced throughout the whole program because the accelerator is all about taking action and getting your big goals completed. But it was really interesting today on our group call because we talked about the difference between implementing and commitment, and not necessarily the difference, but the break between the two, because it can feel really easy to feel like when you're taking action, everything has to get done. So let's preface this podcast with the difference between implementing and commitment. Now, implementing is putting into use your desired skills or values. And if you listened to the podcast last week, you know that I emphasized over and over that it's not about being perfect. It's just about trying. It's just about working on the skills that you want and practicing the values that you want in your life. But the difference with commitment's actually getting stuff done. So let's take this example. I had a client that was really struggling to get social media content written and done and posted. And she had made a plan that she wanted to post 3 times a week according to what she had learned in the Community to Cash Challenge. Because in the Bossminded Facebook group, I taught marketing strategies that will make you money in less than 5 days. And she ran with that. And she did it, and she made cash on day 5, and it worked. And so she wants to repeat this over and over again. But she found a gap in her progress because the Community to Cash Challenge, a lot of her friends were doing it at the same time. And now that a lot of her friends are not doing it, she found it really difficult to be consistent with posting. So she was struggling with having a plan and not being able to follow through. But today on the call, we talked about implementing can really look like anything because it's practicing your skills. So for this particular client, we talked about implementing can look like sitting down and brainstorming. That's implementing. It can be sitting down and writing, and that's implementing. But the jump is where we make it a commitment and we say, did your stuff actually get posted? Because commitment is dedicating yourself to a cause, or it's binding yourself to an outcome. And commitments are black and white. These are things that can be proven that you did it. So if your goal is to post more on social media, then it's like, show me your posts. Let's see how they did. So commitment, I want you to recognize that in your planning stages or your goal setting stage, a commitment is where it's like icing on the cake. It's like, show us that it's done and show us what you actually did, because you can plan all day long and you can think about what you want to do and you can take action on it, but there has to be a time where you actually complete what you set out to do. So here are some ways that you can work on your commitments. The number one thing that I find value in, especially as an accountability expert, is sharing your commitments with other people. And one of my clients today, she shared a quote that said, you can't build a reputation on things you said you were going to do. So I resonate with that. That resonates with me because that is so true. Like, you guys don't know this podcast because I privately told you somewhere I was going to do a podcast. No, every single podcast episode is a commitment to me having a podcast because it's set in stone. It's done. You can listen to it and it's published. So commitments, I think, are really beneficial when you tell somebody about them, because that external link to accountability is going to ensure that stuff actually gets done to completion and it exists somewhere. Another thing that makes commitment items more realistic and you increasing the likelihood of getting them done is actually writing them down and tracking your progress somewhere. So for me, I really love to write down all of my goals in a Trello board, and these tasks turn into commitments, and you can literally line them up and say what needs to happen first. And my commitments, I love this so much. You can check a box that says they're done. And every time the commitment gets completed, that's another brick for the house that you're building, for the business that you're building. And commitments are what move the needle in your business, because it's not just saying you're going to do things, but it's proof that you have actually built the house. So with your commitments, I want you to think about what are some things that you have really bound yourself to. And these are probably big life commitment items. It might be like attending church every week. It might be a date night with your spouse. It might be keeping up on your kids' homework. Like, these are all things that have to be done on a regular basis. And when you do them, it has a big impact. And when you neglect them, it has a big impact as well. So binding yourself to an outcome is you trying over and over and over again, but every once in a while hitting that piece where it's set in stone. Hey, my beautiful people. The message of waking up and showing up is yours for the taking. In fact, it's completely free. All you got to do is take this quick action. I've recorded my entire audiobook and I'd love for you to consume it between episodes. Head to marcybarker.com to get instant access to the accountability code, Wake Up and Show Up. Commitments are really important because if you don't commit to something, then you're going to forever spin your wheels on trying. And when you don't have those consistent wins or those consistent completed commitment items, it makes it really hard to move forward because you haven't any checkpoints. You haven't solidified what you want to do. So commitment items don't have to be big. It's really nice when they're not big. If you are working on building up your confidence, and you might really benefit from smaller commitment items. But let's take, for example, my book. Okay, you guys, my book is in revision stage. We're in the second round of revision, so it's so close to being done, the Becoming Bossminded book. And what's really cool about this and this conversation with commitment is that I have a commitment to get my book out. And that means I have a lot of checkpoint commitments that are set in stone that have to be completed in order for me to say, hey, I wrote another book. So some of those commitments, let's maybe work from the back or the end, is that, okay, my book will come out. There will be a day where you can go to Amazon and purchase my book and you will have a real book in your hands. That is evidence of a commitment that I set myself to. Another commitment is sending it off to the editor. We've had to do that. Another commitment is getting the foreword done. Oh, you guys, guess who has written a foreword to my book? My bestie, Brian Smith. He's the founder of UGG Boots. And I met him a few years at a conference, and he said something to me. This is kind of a tangent, but this will get you excited about the book. When I met him a few years ago, actually, we had known each other for a couple years by now, but I was talking to him about business growth, and he said, you can't give birth to an adult. And I was like, what? And he talked about the business stage. Like, growing a business is like having a little baby, and you have to learn how to deal with the fact that it's a baby. Like, it doesn't know how to crawl yet. It's still trying to drink milk. It's trying to figure out who it can depend on for growth. And then you get to a point where it does learn how to crawl. And then it's learning to walk, and it falls down a lot. And you have to be patient with it because the natural progression of growth means you're going to make mistakes. So anyway, Brian was so fantastic to write me this forward, but one of my commitment items was reaching out to him and saying, hey, Brian, would you be willing to write a forward or an acknowledgement? And he did both, and that was a commitment that I set out to do. So that is proof. Like, I could show you the email that says, here, Marcy, here's the forward, and it's great. That's a commitment item. That's something that I bound myself to that got completed. Another example of a commitment item is to write all of the stories. Now, in the Becoming Boss-Minded book, there are 9 chapters, and in each of those chapters, there are 6 stories, because another one of the commitments to writing a successful book is to have a solid framework that goes with it. So that's what I did. I committed to developing a framework to go with it. So there's a framework that is 5 steps, and in each chapter, I lay out one of the steps with the story, and then there's a final story that ties it all together. So commitments is I had to figure out what I was going to put in. What's 9 times 6? 54? 54 different stories I had to come up with and write, and it was great. But it can be very daunting to say, oh, I'm going to go write a book in a month. No, you have to break it down, and your commitment items are what help you do that and to gain the confidence that you can just take the next step the next time. So as we're talking about commitments, I just want you to think, what are some things that you have set in stone? What are some checkpoints that you can say, this is proof that I'm making progress? And your checkpoints are you putting into place things that you care about. Your checkpoints and binding yourself to an outcome is how you become a more accountable person. So we're going to finish up next week in feedback. That's the last step of the accountability code. I will share more about what's in the Becoming Boss-Minded book, but let's do this before we hop off. I want you to go to bossminded.com and you guys can get on the wait list for the book, because guess what? There are some awesome perks that come from purchasing the book on its release day. And I will let you know when all of that is, but this book is going to be amazing. And not only does it touch on the accountability code, but it is full of strategies that you can use to build your business. And what's really awesome about every single story that I put in the book is that it's going to help you create accurate commitment items. That's actually one of the stories in the book, is creating accurate commitment items, because they need to be accurate so that your likelihood of getting them done happens. And I have so many different resources to help you do that. But today, as we close out this podcast on your loving kick in the pants, I want you to know that you have it in you to do the things that you care about, and you have it in you to actually check off things that you've wanted to do for a really long time. And I hope that you use the accountability code to align yourself in mind and body so that follow through becomes easy and peaceful, because that's what it's all about. And when you find your own personal code for accountability, you'll find that the game of accountability becomes so much more easy for you. And that's my goal. So I'm here to be your loving kick in the pants, and we'll see you next week for another episode. Thank you for listening, friends. If you got value out of this episode, I would love for you to drop a review or share this with a friend. Let's be real. Let's spread the word, because we all know someone who could use your loving kick in the pants.